Welcome to Reading the Gospels Together for Monday, June the 1st. June the 1st. And today, with Ritter's help, we're looking at Luke chapter 9. Actually, we're looking at a small section of Luke chapter 9, verses 18 through 20, which is one of the most important in all of the New Testament. Now, I took a look at how we handled this passage in our Matthew and Mark videos from last month and the month before. And while we covered the other things said and done pretty completely, we need to flesh out this section a bit. And we'll read the part from Luke, but Matthew's the one who really carries the ball on this one, so I'll be referring back to his gospel as well. Now, to begin with, here's how Luke tells it. Once when Jesus was praying in private and his disciples were with him, he asked them, "Who do the crowds say that I am?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, still others, one of the prophets long ago has come back to life." "But what about you?" Jesus asked. "Who do you say I am?" And Peter answered, "God's Messiah." Now that's concise and to the point, but for some more detail, some of it very important, here's Matthew's account. Chapter 16 in Matthew, verses 13 and onward. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say that I am?" And Simon Peter answered, "You're the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven." And then he ordered his disciples not to tell anyone that he was the Messiah. So why is this one of the most important passages in all the New Testament? Well, let's get some background. It seems Jesus and the gang needed to get away for a bit, what with things becoming too crowded in the hometown of Capernaum and throughout all of Galilee. Jesus' reputation was growing, and it was such that the news that he was here or he was there was enough to clog the streets with hopeful crowds, enough to jam the lawns with stretchers. And Jesus was more than generous with his time and with his energy, but the disciples were ready to drop. So Jesus takes them up the Jordan River to its source, the hopping pagan tourist town of Caesarea Philippi. Now, Caesarea Philippi was like a religious Disneyland of sorts. It was a kind of a theme park of the gods, where all the religions and gods of the known world were represented with their own place, their own statue, their own temple, dozens of gods, maybe hundreds. You can travel there today. It's in the very northerly tip of Israel. I bring people up there all the time. And on the face of the cliff, you can still see the niches in which the idols were kept and still read the inscriptions and lean on the pillars of the temples. So that sets the scene. Now, safely anonymous among the Gentiles who were visiting all possible shrines in the hope that if you worshipped every known god, you'd eventually get lucky with the right one, Jesus crosses his arms and looks around, and he's shaking his head in amazement because there were temples here and temples there to Pan and Zeus and Caesar and Aphrodite, even the gates of Hades, massive marble columns flanking the entrance to a cave reputed to be the doors to hell itself. And Jesus turns to his disciples and he says to them, in the middle of this place, "Who do people say I am?" Which is to say, all of these gods, every known god, some even long forgotten, with all of this, what about me? Who do people say I am? It takes a moment, but one suggests John the Baptist, another tries Elijah, a few come up with a prophet or two. Well, that's what people are saying anyway, says Andrew. But Jesus doesn't let them get away with passing the buck. He makes the question more specific. But what about you? Who do you say that I am? Well, silence. The disciples are looking at one another and looking at the ground, looking at the sky, looking everywhere but looking Jesus in the eye, until, of course, Peter opens his mouth. And for a change, not just to insert a foot. In fact, he says just about the most important thing he's ever said, just about the most important thing he ever will say. Peter clears his throat and he answers him with the answer of all answers, God's Messiah, he says. That's what Luke records. But Peter says, in fact, quite a bit more than that. We need to go to Matthew for the more complete story. And Matthew remembers it like this in chapter 16, verses 16 through 19. Simon Peter answered, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by man, but by my Father in heaven. And I tell you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overcome it." You're the Christ, the Messiah, the one we've all been waiting for, and you're God's own Son, Son of the living God, not one of these dead gods, says Peter. And Jesus takes him by the shoulders and he says, "Simon, son of Jonah." Jonah would have been Peter's father's name. "Simon, son of Jonah, you've just been blessed by God because no one here told you this. My Father did, my Father in heaven. And from now on, I'll call you Peter, the rock, because what you've just said is the rock upon which I'll build my church. And not even those gates," he says, pointing to the massive gates of the underworld, which were right there, "not even the gates of Hades will overcome it." So there they are, standing in the shadow of the immense rock wall of Caesarea Philippi, a rock upon which 100 temples are built. But it is the rock of the confession of Peter, the rock which says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." That's the rock upon which the church will be built. The rock of faith, the foundation of our faith. The belief we have, the relationship of faith we have with Jesus Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God. That's a rock that'll never be shaken. That's a rock for all time. See, the church Jesus builds, you see, is not a building. It's not a brick and mortar thing. It doesn't have a foundation of stone or concrete or, God forbid, sand. It's a gathering of people. The word church means to gather. It's a gathering of people with faith in Christ, uniting them as one, uniting them as the children of God, as the brothers and sisters of Jesus Christ, uniting them as the church. In fact, it's in this passage in Matthew that the word church is first to be found. It's where it got its beginning. And the seed of its conception is faith. And that's a seed that would grow and flower and come to include you and me. We're the church that began in that most unlikely of places upon that very day. Peter's realization of who Jesus is the moment it all changed. The moment that we came into being, the foundation upon which the church itself was built, all in those few special verses. Now tomorrow, we'll be looking at Luke chapter 10. We're introduced to not just 12 disciples, but 72. We also get to meet some of Jesus' closest friends, Mary and Martha, yes, another Mary. And we come face to face with perhaps the most famous parable of all. We'll see you then. And so for me and for Ritter, the Wonder Beagle, it's a good night, and we'll see you tomorrow.